Java's doing good, so it's the heat of the day time for the fan. Hi. As I'm doing videos rather than saving my own life, it becomes necessary to talk about crisis situations. There have been some massively intense storms and disasters of Mother Nature, more so lately. And when it doesn't hit us, the majority of people might be concerned for others, but people don't necessarily learn from it or think that there's nothing they can do. If it happens, it happens, and they'll just go with the flow when it happens. And that's the wrong attitude to take. As an Eagle Scout, there's be prepared. And as a firefighter, I was a first responder. And what we saw in some of these natural disasters that occurred recently, this month even, is the devastation, the destruction, and the helplessness of those who are victims. Communication gets cut, power gets cut, homes are destroyed, and thus lack of food, medical, and toiletries, and all that kind of stuff. Those who are experienced with hiking and camping, they know what needs to be brought for those situations. But when those supplies are destroyed, you have to figure out how to create supplies from the ruins in order to survive. You have to obtain shelter, obtain food, clothing, medical supplies, hygiene and sanitation, and communication needs to be established among energy and fuel and other basic necessities. And typically people don't know how to establish a triage or a base command to have everything organized during such a crisis, because people assume that there will be those who are in the field or in government who would do that. But we've seen in our American history that organizations such as FEMA are slow to respond. I was disappointed with the Tonga response. They should have immediately responded, not wait to make contact first before going in. That was a major hesitation blunder. When that volcano was known to go off, there should have been an immediate rush of emergency first responders towards the scene, knowing that there would be a tsunami, so that you don't send boats in, obviously. You send planes or helicopters or other modes of transportation that would not get in harm's way themselves. And and drop in if necessary, and first responders or food supplies. As in wartime, watching Hogan's Heroes, air supplies were done to drop in supplies. The Red Cross, they talk about having their weekly drop of supplies for the prisoners, and the German officers were required to have them delivered to the prisoners. So there were certain rules that needed to be followed under those circumstances. But in a crisis situation, you learn the true nature of the people you thought you knew for a long time. Having watched disaster movies lately, they portray different kinds of responses during a crisis, and the most common one is shock. You go into a state of shock and you can't function. You need medical attention, in the sense of somebody pulling you to safety until you come out of your shock. And then there are others who reveal that they were never your friends. People who pretended to be your friend until the crisis hit, and then they abandon you. And that can be a devastating shock in and of itself, realizing that somebody has just abandoned you in a time of crisis. With the current crisis that's going on around the world, now going on 3 years, our year's supply should have been exhausted by now, right? Everybody had a year's supply, was obedient to the prophets of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who've always been telling us to have a year's supply, right? And that's all gone now, right? You're not living from paycheck to paycheck. But there are certain things that individuals need to have in case of such a devastating natural disaster as the Tongan earthquake, the Tennessee tornadoes, or were they Kentucky tornadoes? Because there's another one that happened, but the East Coast, the cyclone bomb that happened there, shutting off over 100,000 people's power. There was one in the northwest, north central west, that caused tornado problems up there too, and then the south had tornado problems, and it's not even tornado season, and we've got severe cold, so lots of things. And January 1st, the meteor strike in Pennsylvania, west of Pittsburgh. But that was a minor situation, but it caught everybody by surprise. And so, I guess to help put into your minds what you need to have on hand if you have to run for your life, or if your life is devastated, that you have, hopefully, the initial supplies. You need shelter. With your home destroyed, a tent. The homeless know this, even though Utah does not want tent cities. Well, they need to stop creating the homeless. If they don't want there to be homeless, or they don't want the homeless to have tent cities, they need to stop making tents, and they need to stop making the homeless. But they won't do that. They love the victim blame. It'd be nice to have transportation, but if your vehicle is destroyed and it's a massive devastation, you pretty much have your feet. Unless you have some kind of a bicycle that can pull some kind of a wagon behind it. That's what I should have done way back in the day. Should have. When I first moved here, we have a U-Haul store just en route, and I drove by that and saw that, and I went, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that's going to come in handy one day. But then, with my initial money that was coming in, I had considered a bike, but thought in and of itself it wasn't very productive. But now, as I'm about to be evicted, that would have been better than the dolly that I have. To have a bicycle and then a carriage that can be pulled in back of it. Some little wagon thing. But retrospect doesn't help you in a crisis. Then food. It's going to be difficult to have perishable foods. This is where hiking and camping comes in handy, because you know what kind of foods to bring on a camp out or a hike. I have granola bars, for example, because I was inspired to get granola bars. I don't know. I think I might have touched on it back in the day when I got them, or at least it was talked about in my journal vlogs. But yeah, I got the impression I should start buying granola bars. And the day that I was to do it, I wasn't able to get granola bars, and I was concerned that I failed to follow the promptings, and then other neighbors, I didn't tell anybody this, they then put out their granola bars that they had for others to take, and nobody else wanted them because everybody was giving away theirs, so I took them. And then I was able to buy granola bars because nothing happened for the need for granola bars. But I thought that was really strange. But here I am. I now have granola bars for the trek. Clothing, you know, you have to be aware of the weather conditions. If I'm going to be out for the rest of my life, I'm going to need wardrobe for all seasons of the year. So, at least one pair, or one extra pair of clothing, preferably two, and a doubling up on the socks. Let's see, food, clothing, shelter, medical supplies, a first aid kit, and then hygiene. If you do lots of traveling, you have your traveling hygiene kit, and that works. I won't be able, well, I could, I guess. I have a mirror. I made sure to get a mirror for such occasion. So yeah, I could bring the razor, and it'll be a little bit difficult to bring shaving cream. It's quite thick, and but it could be done. Electric razor, you would have to have some kind of generator power source. I do, and so I could bring my razors, my electric razor, for hair cutting. I'm expected to cut my hair tomorrow morning, because it's laundry day, and it's around the 1st of the month. And with my little generators, they're solar powered. I have solar panels that I can plug into them, and so I would have energy and fuel for minor stuff. Have them charged while I'm walking during the day, and if needing to utilize some kind of an energy source, it will provide me with energy during the night. I have a watch and a flashlight that are solar powered, so they're fully charged and available. The one solar power watch that I had, which was all digital, the 10-second spot has gone out, and so that's frustrating. When I'm trying to catch a bus, it's necessary to know how much time I have left to catch the bus from the store. But that's a frustration, but I had a backup solar power. So yes, having backups is a good idea. If you were to do solar, you'd have to understand that you need to get high wattage. You can't just buy solar panels without knowing the wattage, because there are people who try to cheat you by selling you stuff with a low wattage. And I would have liked to have known that in the beginning, because I have varying wattages of solar panels. But the one that's the higher wattage is the smaller of all of them. So that's interesting. So I look at people's homes who have solar power, and they have numerous panels filling up their roof. You guys got screwed. You got a low wattage, as they conned you into giving them more money to cover your electronic needs for the home. But that's another issue of personality, is that people will think of only themselves in a crisis, and they will cheat, and they will steal, and they will lie and betray you so that they survive and you don't. There's nothing worse than to hear of the homeless stealing from other homeless. You'd think they would band together, but there are those who don't, who purposely betray them. And so the homeless learn they've got to be very protective and defensive about their property that they obtain. and then to have the government come in and throw it away. The government being the enemy that caused their condition in the first place, further victimizing them. But in a crisis situation, luxury items are no longer important, or at least a priority. And as much as we'd like to have certain items, especially if they've got sentimental value from loved ones, that can be tough. But photographs, yeah, digitize them. Have a thumb drive and a backup so that you have documents and pictures and all that stuff, documents, other documents and such. So I've got the record of the history of the people digitized, so that I don't have bookshelves upon bookshelves, a library worth of the history of the people. It's all condensed into digital format. And so with the solar panel generators that I have, I'll still be able to access them. But yeah, I remember the fires here in Utah, when the fires were severe before a less severe year, as people had to just get in their car and flee. They had to abandon their homes, and if you have to walk, you need to be able to carry it. See, me, I have a dolly that I can turn into a push cart, and so I can put crates that I got for it, or boxes, and strap them in so that they stay in place. But otherwise, I would pretty much be able to only take a backpack and strap on a sleeping bag and the tent. But the cart will allow me more stuff in this situation. You need a good pair of shoes. If you are going to be walking. But knowledge of first aid and CPR helps. In the church, if you are known to be a piano player, you immediately get called to be the pianist in the ward, and you serve as a pianist for the rest of your life. That will be what it'll be like during a crisis event, is that if you know first aid and CPR, you're going to be called on permanently for that position to help in that situation. But if groups of people are able to be found, like earthquakes, you'll have groups of people trying to dig people out of the rubble, and so you'll need a command center set up to bring the injured to, so that they're all together where the medical professionals, first responders are, so that they can all be treated there together, rather than having everybody scattered into their separate locations. You want to gather together as a group, and so it becomes easier to feed the masses that survive, as well as provide them shelter and medical treatment. And so you need organized groups for search and rescue, for obtaining food, for setting up the base camp, communications operations, and those kinds of things need to be thought of under those conditions. Yeah, if Utah were to be destroyed, it's very clear Mormons would be thinking about, do we go to Zion? Is this what we do now, or do we stay here and rebuild Zion here in Utah? Without leadership, there will be confusion. People will not necessarily know what to do and will want somebody else to figure out things for them, or they will do their own thing. I've seen that difference in the disaster movies. You have people thinking that, oh, they know what to do, they'll find a way out, and they end up dying. That's the worst thing you want to do, is segregate yourself, separate from each other. You need to group together for safety. If you think you're going to have to do it on your own, you're just going to make things worse all around. You want to keep the human race going, not go your own way. There are wild animals out there, so that there's safety in numbers for just that alone. But especially once they start smelling the dead, they're already coming inward to feed, to look for food. I see that out here, even though they're expanding further westward. Animals are still making it to my location because they're still looking for food. Their food supply is diminishing. And with a disaster, they're going to start smelling food. Birds tend to, certain birds, predatory birds, vulture birds, will circle around the dead because they are ready for a feast. But animals are able to be a warning system if you know what to look for. But in city life, we don't have much of that kind of warning system for us. So that's my hope, is that people don't betray others during a crisis. That you show that you truly are someone who is humane and cares about other people. And having a knowledge of what to do helps go a long way in that regard. To let people know and say, we need food, we need people to go get food, we need people to set up a base camp, we need people to search and rescue, we need people who are knowledgeable in medical. And if people stick to those conditions, they will survive if outside help doesn't arrive in time. I was disappointed, as the Red Cross seems to be the only help now, as the government takes their time getting to the scene. If it's just the Red Cross, we need people at the scene who know what to do. So I hope that helps. I hope it's not needed, but there it is.